So, welcome to Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury.
The big debate. I've just come back from holiday, and that was a big debate on holiday.
Was it?
Everybody who was there, who knew about Shrewsbury, thought it was Shrewsbury.
Yeah, I've always thought it was Shrewsbury.
Really?
And then my husband took the mick, and I looked it up, and it's something to do with sides of the river and how it was named years ago. Or I thought I'd come educated.
You're probably more educated than us locals, which doesn't say much.
But now I'm calling it Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
I'm corrected.
It's one of the big debates of our time, I think.
Of our time. Wow.
But,
I had no idea.
No idea. I know it gets very contentious. So I think it depends whether you go to a certain school here. If you go to a certain school, then it's Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury
Is
School.
That the posh
That's
school?
The posh school.
Got you.
And if you, just one of the other folk around the place,
then it's Shrewsbury. Okay, good to know.
So now you're armed and prepared.
I'm armed, prepared, corrected.
To walk the streets of Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
And
it's very beautiful.
it is very nice to have.
I've never been,
fortunate.
so it was lovely to get out and have a look.
Yeah.
Very Tudor.
Very Tudor, yeah. Yeah, no, we've got a lot of history here. So anyway, should we do a podcast?
Sure.
So hello and welcome to the SME Growth Podcast. Today, we unfortunately don't have Dave Parry with us, so I've got myself and a guest, Tracey Miller.
Hello.
Hello. Would you like
Very happy to be here.
Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, so I've been running my own business now for 17 years. I run it with my business partner, and we run a membership club to support small service-based businesses to grow. So under $1 million, helping them launch, build and scale successful businesses.
Cool. And it's one of the things that I suppose when you kind of reached out to us, we get a lot of people reach out to us about coming on the podcast. But one of the things that I've always found quite interesting is being part of a group of other business people.
Yep.
Having that community. I was part of, and Dave was as well, part of Academy of Chief Executives, which people may know is kind of a Vistage type of thing. And that was quite good. I'm part of organisation Faith Driven Entrepreneurs at the moment, and that's really good as well. And I think there's something about having other people alongside you that can really help you in your business career, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been a game changer for me actually to be part of that community and have it grow. But we were talking before about you're the sum of the 5 or 6 people that you're surrounded with, and I think for me that it's absolutely true. That's incredibly powerful to be around, like-minded people that are going through similar things that you're going through, but also want to achieve the same goals. It's super powerful.
And I think sometimes I find I always use this analogy of like Hot Wheels.
I do.
The Hot Wheels track.
Yeah.
And then there's those little bits where the car goes through and it just accelerates it for the next bit of the track. And I think sometimes that's what community or membership groups or whatever that you're part of act as that kind of, you almost arrive pretty knackered and tired.
Yeah.
And then you meet with other people, you get that energy, and then it sets you up for the next bit of the track.
Do you know, I really like that analogy. I'm going to use that in a post. That's really good.
You heard it here first, everybody.
Yeah, I will definitely credit you. But that idea that they kind of show up, a bit tired, you're not wrong. So people typically don't want to change anything if things are going well. Where they're looking for something new, something different is where they're struggling. So you're absolutely right about that. And then what you have with the right environment is just this pool of skills, resources, knowledge, energy that you're lacking that kind of gives you that Hot Wheels shove. So
and I think the other thing as well, I think some people come to those full of energy, like you say. Other people come totally beaten up.
They do.
And depending on where you're at in your business cycle, you're going to be either one of those people. So it is, being part of a community, I think is, and I think what we find as well, and we found this through the podcast, is that we get, some fan mail, as it were, not just my mum or Dave's mum, but
actual fan mail from actual people.
But no, actual people writing in saying that actually this is, they're on their own in this a bit, and there's only so much that your spouse or kids or whoever want to hear about your business. And actually being part of a community, or at least kind of, I guess, empathizing or being able to just relate to other people is a really powerful thing.
It is. I remember when I left my safe corporate role to set up my business, my entire family thought I was insane. This was a regular salary to literally wander into the ether and without a plan. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was the right thing for me. Yeah. But there was no support, not because they didn't want to support you, it's because they had absolutely no clue what the hell you were doing. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that's consistent. So, many people have, supportive families, supportive wives, supportive husbands, but most of the time they just don't have a clue how to support you because it's such a unique path that you're taking. Yeah. The other challenge I think that most business owners face is we all have fears and doubts and demons that we're all dealing with. When you're running a business, it magnifies all of that. So you suddenly meet yourself coming backwards. It's such a challenging path. And so even, the people that are around supporting you, they're seeing you struggle and fight with yourself. And they just want you out and, back to what they understand and, you being happy again. So it's a really hard path, but very, very worth it if you're prepared to do it.
I think there's some common maybe misconceptions about what running a business is like for people who've never run a business or been around people who run a business, that you can take whatever time off you want, you're the boss, you can do what you want, and you're some sort of Scrooge McDuck counting your gold coins kind of thing going on. And in 99.99% of the time, that's just not the case, is it?
It's not. It's just not the case at all. So you do get it a lot. You can just take time off, but you can't. As a business owner, you have to. It's such an interesting thing, but you straddle this path between being a human being and being the custodian of what is a psychopathic business. All it really cares about is staying alive by you putting money in the front end. And so you're constantly straddling this path. It doesn't care that you need time off or need a break. It just wants to live. And so it's this constant battle of straddling this path. But you don't get sick pay, you don't get holiday pay, you don't. You get paid for the work that you do. It's really challenging.
And I think there is that you're on show, you make yourself quite vulnerable.
Very.
There's a whole load of stuff around imposter syndrome as well, and all of that type of stuff. So having other people around is then, quite a healthy thing and helpful thing, I think, for people to do. So we're seeing sort of membership organisations on the rise at the moment. Are there any particular reasons for that?
Yeah, I think there are a number of reasons. So I think human beings anyway aren't meant to be separate, that no man is an island type thing. I think we're meant to be in, groups and communities. That's how we're naturally built. So I think there's that. But I think for me, the whole lockdown hoo-ha, it just... when you force people in one direction, so you just separate them all, there's this tendency for people to want to come back. So I think there's been a spring back to communities and wanting to be together as a result of that. I've really seen that. And then the other thing for me is, more and more people are getting disillusioned by the corporate role. And we're seeing a lot more people enter the world of, business ownership. Yeah. And it's hard, it's such a new world. You just don't know. You don't even know what you don't know. Yeah. And so getting yourself into those communities and just being with other people that are also feeling how you feel, both, the excitement and also the fear. It helps a lot.
And are you seeing anything around age groups with that? So I read something the other day around something like 70% of Gen Z don't want to work for someone else. They want to do their own thing. And I think there's a lot more opportunity to do that now than maybe there was 20, 30 years ago with digital businesses, online, whatever. I think there's a whole culture around entrepreneurialism that in the UK probably wasn't there so much.
I agree.
In 20, 30 years ago. It's a big kind of Instagram thing. So are you seeing that?
Absolutely.
Your groups?
So certainly the younger generation. I forget all the generations. So I'm Gen X. I think you're Gen. Are you Gen?
I'm Gen X.
You're Gen X.
I'm on the cusp.
Just,
I'm 1980.
Just. Okay, fair enough.
I claim it.
Just. Fair enough. You're owning it. Good. I thought you were a lot younger than me, but you're not. So the Gen Xers, they were like, hardcore graft it out. But they're at the point where they're kind of just done. They've grafted for years and they just want to do something different. So I think that's what's moving those into the entrepreneurial arena. Yeah. But this kind of era that we're in, we're seeing more and more success from people that don't have like a background or experience or funding. They're just able to go out and, you know, like the influencer environment, you know, it's very inspirational just to work for yourself. And so I think we've seen a lot of role models in that space now for the younger generations, which are causing them to see it as an option. For me, it wasn't an option. You know, you go to university, you get a degree, you come out, you get a job.
Yeah.
That's what I always thought you had to do. So, so with those options now open, people are seeing those role models. I think we're seeing a lot more entrepreneurship, and good. I think that's what this society needs. A lot more small businesses.
Do you think all of those role models are necessarily positive? Because I think there's an awful lot of. And I think this is where maybe a membership group or a community around you that's solid can really help.
Yeah.
Because I see in some of the communities, business communities that I'm in, there's a huge amount of either expectation on people, or they think it's going to be easier than it's going to be.
Yeah, there is a lot of that.
Or they're really looking at the kind of end goal way too soon, and all of those. There's a whole load of mixed stuff in there that I think actually you've seen something, you've got a vision. Yeah. But it needs a little bit of calibration.
So calibration is a really good term for it, and you've hit the nail on a number of things. So one is it does look easy. I mean, influencers, it just looks so easy. You know, you play with your dog on camera a few times and people will pay you loads of money for that. Yeah. So it does look easy. The other thing, though, you said is absolutely key. They've got this kind of end goal of millions. You know, they come out with, I want to make millions. You know, I want to have this business where I'm swanning around. But there are stages you have to go through. And if you know, we see it with overnight successes in like the music industry, for example. They go hard and then they crash hard because they didn't have what we call it entrepreneurial conditioning, which is a very elegant term for the shit show that is learning to run a business. You know, all the failures, all the humiliations, the losses, but they're all necessary for you to build the like foundations that you need to run a successful business. Everyone wants the end game. They don't want, well, quite, but you've got to go through those stages of challenge to condition you for what comes later.
Well, I always talk about you've got to fail your way to success, and I think in the UK particularly, there's a culture of failure is the end type of thing. There's a real we don't embrace failure maybe in the same way that Americans do, where it's like failure is just part of the process. We have a kind of much more, I don't know, kind of visceral reaction to failure in this country. And I think, but you are going to fail if you're trying to do anything in business. Yeah. You're just going to. There's no way that you can have success after success after success. But if you have that longer term picture, and I think if you have people around you who can encourage you to keep going when you do have those dips and those failures, then that is actually quite a powerful thing to start building into your business kind of ecosystem, business thinking, and all that type of thing.
Yeah, I agree. What's your biggest failure on your journey so far?
Biggest failure? Oh wow, that's not on the list.
I'm just curious.
That question's not on the list.
I'm just curious.
Biggest failure? I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I'd probably have to think about that. I think it's probably not taking some opportunities that I could, rather than an actual failure of something.
Missed opportunity.
It's probably more. But fear of failure as well. I think that's a huge thing.
It is huge. It's an abyss, fear of failure, and it pulls you towards it. It's
And I think it's one of those things that maybe you learn with a bit of age and experience as well. So I mean, I've always had that kind of relationship with failure. Like I said, I kind of see it as for me, if you've got an end goal that you're aiming at, then if you fail, it's not necessarily. I don't frame it as failure. Yeah. And it's just right. Okay, that's a lesson. Move forward. Keep going. You've got a bigger picture, which is why I'm always saying to people, you've got to have that big picture for your life, for your business, for your family. Like we do a vision board as a family. I'm trying to get
vision boards. They're so underrated.
I'm trying to get my kids into it. Like, what's this big picture for your life? Because if you frame your life like that, then when you're looking at when you have a hiccup in the journey, or you trip over, you fall over, you whatever. At the end of the day, that's just another day. It's just another step on the big journey and the big picture. If you don't have that big picture and you fall over, you've fallen over. Like that's it. That's So you've got to have the bigger horizon of where you are in life, or where you want your life to be. And I think again, I think that is, we're missing some of that. And you do need other people around you to say, no, actually, I think you could do this, or I think you could do this, and then you've got to do that to other people as well. And I think if we could build that kind of culture within UK business, right, then you could really unleash quite a lot of positivity and performance and power. There you go. 3, giving you alliteration.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I'll take that.
You take that one as well. But no, that's a good question. That's a good question.
I think what's interesting about what you said, though, is you're not seeing failure as failure. No. So because of the vision that you have, we've all cocked up along the way. I can think of 100 things that I've done that I would do differently. Yeah. But like you said, because we have this vision of what it is that we're going for, it's not failure, it's learning. It's just okay, not that. Like, let's look at something else. But what you said about the community, somebody to pick you up. So somebody to stop you doing the stupid thing is good because they've already done it. So that's good learning. Yeah. But also somebody who, when you do the thing that wasn't the right thing, that says, oh, yeah, I did that. And here's where I am now. I'm over it. I've moved forward. Yeah. All helps to keep the momentum going. I think we're conditioned in the UK, stiff upper lip and all that, to not really show and share vulnerability, which is where the imposter syndrome comes from. So I don't think it's the same in America. I think it's, like you said, part of the course. But we are very conditioned in the UK. There's a lot of work to do to decondition us in the way that we generally approach things. Yeah,
and to say it's okay to fail. Yeah, and because that's just part of the journey.
It's part of it, exactly.
Part of the journey. But we do have this thing here where we support an underdog to the point where they're no longer the underdog.
That's it. I love an underdog.
And then we kick the chair out from them. And again, that's just not a very helpful. And I think that sort of thing puts a lot of people off being entrepreneurial.
It does.
And we have a very different attitude in the UK to like capital and investment than they do in America. And so those sorts of things as well just don't help that kind of roll the dice, take a risk type of thing. Like you say, your journey was, why would you want to start a business? Stay safe.
Exactly that. Stay safe, exactly.
So if someone was listening to this and thinking, well, actually, this sounds like an interesting thing to join a community, join a membership group, what sort of things should they be looking for?
So they really need to think about what they want to get from the membership. So in the small business arena, there are really 2 different types. You've either got a networking type membership or you've got a business growth membership, and they're very different. They cross over, but they are very different. And what I'm seeing is people, like joining one and wanting the other. Right, okay. So first of all, you need to work out: do you want networking, which is about referrals and building the network, or do you want to learn the skills that are required to grow a business? So that's the first thing. The second thing for me is really doing your due diligence, because there's a lot of really good marketeers out there, and a lot of the clubs are pushing marketing because it's all about the marketing. And actually there is a whole bunch of other skills that are required to run a successful business, and they're getting missed. So you really need to do your due diligence about, is it the right information for you at the right stage, which is what we talked about earlier, in your business. People are getting caught up in hanging out with other £1 million businesses when they've barely made their first 10 grand. And just the conversation, you don't need to have that conversation yet. You want to make sure it's perfect for where you are, and there are other people in that club that are where you are. The other thing for me is that the people that run it, they need to have experience. So a lot of people out there in the coaching industry, there's no barrier to entry. They've read a book and they are coming out claiming that they know what they're talking about. Nothing beats experience. So you want somebody at least in that club, someone in the leadership team or somewhere, to have been there and done it. Because it just saves you so much time, money and energy.
So that's an interesting question then. So if you've got a group around you, and like you're saying there, you've got some people who've just done their first 10K, which is like kudos. You've created 10K out of nothing, right? And that's the whole thing about business. You are creating something out of nothing. So you've done that. So you've got maybe some other people around you who are at that stage as well, maybe a little bit further on, and then you've got someone who's hit the £1 million mark. What sort of ratio? Because I can see the benefit of being in a peer group where everyone's at the same stage, because it could be potentially disillusioning to have someone who's there going, oh, I'm at the 5 million stage.
It can,
But it also could be quite inspiring if you've got the right person potentially. So is there kind of a mix of a group that you should be looking at?
So I'm a big fan of having groups where there is aspiration in it. So those bigger businesses. But what you don't want is that in the day-to-day, so the day-to-day operations, because they're talking about strategies that cost 50,000 and you're making 10.
Yeah.
So, and I've been there. So as a small business in the beginning, I was trying to implement a marketing wheel of 12 things that that scenario. Like I didn't know at the time it was ludicrous. And what I needed was sales. I needed sales coming in, and I'm focused on this marketing nonsense. So what's important is having your peer group in the day-to-day so that you're learning the things that are the foundations for this level, and then you learn the things that are the foundations for this level whilst keeping an eye on the aspirational stuff and where those guys are.
Right, okay. So it's a bit of both.
It for me, it is, for me.
And so how can people... So say someone finds a group that's right for them. What's your tips for getting the most out of?
Yeah.
Should you be just turning up and absorbing? What's the, participating? What's the kind of
So from personal experience, you get what you put in to groups like this. So with the best one in the world, nobody that runs a membership club can guarantee you results. So it's you have to work in communion. So they can create the environment, the infrastructure, but you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
So you've really got to show up, and before you join a club, you've got to think about whether you're prepared to do that.
Right.
Because that means showing up not just when things are going great and you're celebrating. It also means showing up when it's a bit shit and you're feeling really vulnerable and it's still showing up. So that's the key thing for me. And doing the work. It's like nothing happens unless you do the activity. You cannot become successful by osmosis.
Yeah.
You have to actually implement and be brave enough to go and do the work. And then the other thing for me is communication. So if it is a two-way thing, it's like any relationship, at the heart of it is trust, and at the heart of that is communication. So you've got to keep communicating. What a lot of business owners do is, things get difficult and they kind of shut down, and you want to, come out and talk and be open and really keep the communication open. But participation is critical. It's not just going to happen to you. You've got to do the work.
And do you find this could be controversial? But do you find there's a gender difference in this? Because I'm thinking that when you're talking about trust and communication, I think about a lot of like the blokes I know in business, and that would just be kind of like, this is a bit awkward, chaps, kind of. And I have actually been we had one of the groups I was in years ago, and we had one session where we kind of, it opened up on stress, and we'd all been together. We'd been as a group for probably 5 years at that point, so there was a reasonable degree of trust and vulnerability and whatever. And it just amazed me. Just people that in the morning were quite boisterous and whatever, and when we started sort of picking at the scab a little bit, all of a sudden we almost had grown men in tears, and we had all sorts of stuff. And it was actually it was probably one of the most powerful. It's the only session I remember. Let's put it that way.
Interesting. So there is a gender difference. So and this is just from personal experience. So women find it easier to be with other women and to be open and vulnerable. Men typically don't, and that's just it's a gross generalization. It's just typically, and it's based on what I've seen. But like you said, if you can find an environment, because running a business is hard, and you're going to have really good days where you think you're on top of the world and it's the greatest job in the world, and you are going to have days where you wonder why you were even born. I mean, that is just running a business, and it's cyclical. So if you can find an environment that creates safety for you to explore things like stress and be open, you'll be amazed. You take the lid off, just like your experience. You take the lid off one person, it gives someone else permission to go there, and then before you know it, everyone's there. I don't know a business owner that's just not been stressed. It's just life got better and better and better, and then I died. That's just not the entrepreneurial journey. But those environments, I think, are important, and if we want to change, how British people approach entrepreneurship, I think this is fundamental. There's so much trauma that we are, historically and, childhood, and that we're bringing into running a business. I think these environments are fundamentally important. And the more we can get our men into these environments, the better. Yeah,
all for that.
Yeah.
No, it is a big, I think it is, like a problem shared is a problem halved type thing, isn't it? And we did a podcast, I can't remember what episode it was now, 36 or something, where we talked about stress, and I had someone on who I know is a psychologist, and she's talking about stress. Because part of my early journey was getting really stressed at work, with like a heart rate that was 180 over 130, or I don't know what those numbers mean, but apparently that's bad.
Yes.
and I wasn't we weren't running our own business at the time. I was just in work, but even in that, you felt quite isolated.
Yeah, you do, because you shut down, because you think you're the only person that's dealing with it. You think it's unacceptable, or the shame that comes with not being able to. You feel like you can't cope.
Yeah.
And it's not until you start speaking that you realise just how many people are going through it.
Yeah.
I've had general anxiety disorder my entire life, so I'm just getting on top of it.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, but I've lived in that space of just being permanently anxious. I was in an IT sales role for years, followed the money, did not follow my heart, followed the money, and had imposter syndrome for years in that space. And the anxiety that I suffered just forever was insane. And it's not until you start opening up about that you realise, like, just so many other people are the same. So many people, once I opened up about that, have come to me saying, thank God, you've spoken about it, because it gives other people permission.
I think as well, you can really, like in your situation, when you open up about it, other people come to you. You actually take on that sort of leadership role. You do. Then.
Yeah, you
other
do.
people go, well, actually, you had the kind of the balls to open up about it.
Yeah. I'm
going to come to you. So there's actually a real benefit in vulnerability in the right context.
Correct. It has to be the right context. And it's not about, the attention-seeking side of things, although sometimes we do need attention, but it is about vulnerability with authenticity. So really talking about openly, what you've been through, and especially when you're in a place. So I'm pretty confident now, but I still have days where, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm pretty confident now. So if you can demonstrate that you've got yourself to a place where you've resolved a lot of this stuff, but be open about, the journey that you went on. It's that aspirational piece. It shows people that it's possible to move through it, and you don't have to be like this forever.
And I think is in a world where we have got this kind of social media influencer entrepreneurship type thing, actually having that authenticity.
Yeah,
and I think part of when you're in a group of people that when you meet, if you do that for a while, you very quickly see who's authentic and who's not.
You do.
Because if you're going to get into those situations where you're talking about your business, you're talking about your dreams, your hopes, your failures, all that type of thing, you have to open up. You have to be authentic. It's very hard to, frankly, why would you be in that if you wanted to fake it?
So that's a really good point. So some people still do, but it very quickly becomes incredibly uncomfortable. Yeah, and you can. So, unconsciously, we don't know what the truth is when somebody's giving us bullshit, but we know it's bullshit on some level. So yeah, you can absolutely tell. And the authenticity. So one of the things that attracted me to your podcast was the authenticity. You're just real. You're talking about real stuff in a real way. Yeah. And I really like that. And we need more of that. That's what kills imposter syndrome. Yeah. If we can authentically say, I don't know, or I feel this way, then we don't have to deal with crap like imposter syndrome anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I can't be amazing every day.
I appreciate that.
Just,
I can only imagine.
I take Sundays off. But so the other thing I was thinking around was how. So let's you must see this. People come together into your groups, and that's a kind of a cohort that goes through. I guess is that how it works?
That's right. Yeah. So they come in. They move through. They come into groups and move through. Yeah.
Do they stay together long term, or do they keep those relationships going? Is that another benefit of this?
It is.
Once you've had that shared.
It is. It's a huge benefit. So when you're in an environment that where you can be vulnerable, so it's like a relationship, right? If you're in the relationship where you're vulnerable, you're willing to open up and be honest, everyone gets closer. Yeah. So the benefit for me, exactly what you said, is those relationships are forged, and they're really deep and meaningful relationships because you've had a shared experience, like a real shared experience, and I think the deeper that experience, the longer the relationship lasts. So there's a lot of friendships. There's a lot of networking that's done in a really good, even if it's not a networking group, because the trust is built because you've seen the heart of another human being. Yeah. So it's multi-layered being in the community environment.
So I think anyone who's listening by now has probably gone, I'm inspired to join a community. I think we've had that impact.
Do you think?
I think we
excellent.
Have. What should people watch out for? What would be if you were thinking now, right, okay, I can see the benefit, I want to get involved in one. We've talked about what are the good things about it. what would be a warning sign to you if you were looking at a community?
So I think the biggest warning sign for me is overinflated promises. So nothing chips away at your imposter syndrome and your confidence levels more than like overinflated marketing promises that you then don't achieve.
Yeah.
So that's the key thing for me. The other thing is results. So you want to, coming back to the due diligence, you want to get a real handle on results. So how many people have been there before? How many people have actually got the results that are being shared? They're the key things for me. The last thing I would say is it's all about, we've talked about authenticity. You've got to assess the leadership team for authenticity, and you've got to make sure the environment is safe. It has to be a safe environment. I've had people that I've spoken to come from mastermind groups where it's been their shtick to rip people apart publicly to try and drive them forward. I'm sure there's a place for it. It's not anything that I would want to do. Yeah. For me, I think building confidence and self-esteem is fundamental. And if that's at the heart, then everything else can be learned on top of that.
Brilliant. Well, I really appreciate the conversation. This is something that I'm actually quite passionate about. It may, people listening who know me might think, that's a bit odd. He doesn't seem like that kind of person because he's quite introverted. But I do really believe that community can have a very powerful impact on not only our personal growth, but business growth. And, being part of a community, I found personally has been very, very beneficial. So very much appreciate your insights. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Enjoy. And I've got to do the bit now that Dave normally does, where he turns to the camera and says, thank you for listening to the SME Growth Podcast. Please tell all of your friends about it. Like and subscribe. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, all the other podcast channels that you can consume our content on. And thank you once again for listening to us talk about business.